Hey guys, welcome to our second video on Greek civilization. So where we left off, we were just starting to talk about the culture of the ancient Greeks, and where we started talking was really within their religion. So we said that the ancient Greeks believed in a religion that we know as mythology. So mythology is intertwined with multiple gods and goddesses, all with very human-like characteristics, each with their own special skills. So we said that there are 12 main gods in mythology, Zeus being considered the king of the Olympians. We also said that a part of their religion, most Greeks would then visit a place called the oracle, and in the oracle they would receive their prophecy, what their future held for them. And we said that ancient Greeks really lived their whole life based on what their prophecy was. Okay, so today what we're going to look at is how they kind of told their history to young children. So how did they teach their children about the different conflicts in their past, how they became the strong area of Greece. Okay, and they're going to do this in two types of writings called epics and fables. Okay, so if we look at these two types of writings, they're some of the oldest writings in history. They did provide the basis for many writing structures across Europe and in America. People like William Shakespeare, who I'm sure you've probably heard of, he was one that really borrowed a lot of the plot lines, the setting, for a lot of his plays. So epics and fables really started the writing process for many areas around the world. So we're going to look at epics first and then fables. So epics were really these stories telling about the Greek history. Okay, the problem with epics is that most of the places and the people and the time frame, those are all real, but then certain parts of the story were exaggerated, really to bring in that excitement for young people to get excited about their history. So the two epics that we're going to actually look at, there are multiple, but the two that we'll look at are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Now both of these stories were told by the author whose name is Homer. So Homer wrote both of these writings telling about Greek history. The part of Greek history that Homer is going to discuss is really going to be the conflict between Greece and a city named Troy. So if we think back to our last unit, and we said we had Greece, and then Greece owned colonies across the Aegean on that coastline of Persia, okay, that area called Anatolia, that's where Troy is located, okay, and we know that there's going to be conflict between these two sides of the Aegean. So Homer's going to tell his story about the city of Troy and the conflict they get into with Greece. So if we look at Troy today, it's a city in northwestern Turkey. Again, it's just across the Aegean Sea to the east of Greece. So if we look at the Iliad, okay, and we're going to do the really shortened version of this story, we're going to be talking about the Prince of Troy, okay, and the Prince of Troy falls in love with the wife of a Greek king whose name was Helen, okay, and the prince loved this lady so much that he's going to kidnap her, okay. Once kidnapped, the Greeks are now angry, and the king of Greece is going to say, wow, we want to get revenge, we want to crush Troy, okay, so they're going to send out a whole fleet to go to Troy and break down the walls, okay, and rescue Helen. The problem was they weren't able to actually break down the walls of Troy. So in the Iliad and in Homer's version, okay, what they're going to do, they're going to kind of trick the people of Troy into getting Helen back. So what they decided to do, okay, since they can't get through the walls of Troy, they decided that they were going to build this really large wooden horse, so large, okay, and the whole inside of the horse was going to be empty, enough that they could put their greatest soldiers inside this horse. So they're going to sail this horse across the Aegean, and they're going to place it, okay, outside the palace of Troy. Okay, so once they leave off this horse right outside the palace, the other soldiers are going to get in their boats and they're going to sail back to Greece. Now the people of Troy are going to be watching this whole thing. They're going to see the people from Greece come in. They're going to see them drop off the horse. They're also going to see them board their ships and sail away. Okay, so what we're looking at is that Troy's going to say, they accept their loss. They're giving us a reward to say, yep, we lost this war. Here's a horse to honor that you guys are the winners. Okay, they're going to accept this horse kind of like a prize. So since they accept this horse as a prize, they're going to open the gates of Troy up, and they're going to put this horse in, okay, and they're going to set it in the center of their city, okay, kind of like showing it off, like, hey, we're the winners, look at this big prize that the Greeks got us, okay, and they're going to keep this horse in the center of the city, okay, and then as night falls and all the people of Troy go to sleep, what ends up happening is once everything is quiet, okay, the Greek soldiers are going to get out of that horse. And the first thing they're going to do is open the gates, okay, because at nightfall, all those Greek ships sailed back in. And they were just waiting for those gates to reopen. Okay, so the Greek soldiers inside the horse let the other Greek soldiers in, and they're able to attack, okay, based on kind of like an ambush, and they're going to be able to rescue Helen. Okay, so this is the story of the Iliad, telling how Greece defeated Troy by making this Trojan horse. Okay, so on this slide, we're seeing the Trojan horse. This is actually not a real Trojan horse. It was actually based on the movie of Troy, if you ever seen that. Okay, and on the map, we're going to see where the Greeks came in and where Troy actually was located. Now, the Odyssey is an also epic telling about the same time frame, so we're still looking at the Trojan War. So the Odyssey Homer tells kind of after the war already occurred. Okay, so Odysseus is going to be our main character, and he's going to be considered the hero, okay, of this story. So after the Trojan War, Odysseus is going to begin his long travel home. Okay, so he's going to travel from Troy back to Greece, and this is going to be telling of his travels. Okay, in his journey home, he's going to be met by storms and witches and monsters and all these things that should prevent him from ever getting back. Okay, but the hero that Odysseus was, he was able to make it through all of these obstacles in his journey back to Greece because he really wanted to see his wife. So in this version, Homer is going to make out Odysseus as this main hero. And this hero, since he had such a love of family and a love for Greece, he's able to overcome every obstacle he is met with in order to get back to his country. So in his story, this journey is going to take Odysseus 10 years to actually get to it. Okay, now today we use this word odyssey. That's an actual word that people use. All right, and an odyssey, if you look it up, the definition of it is a long, exciting journey. And that word comes from this story based on this man named Odysseus. So we have some connections between this story of 400 BC to today's world. So if we look at the meaning, okay, to the Greeks, epics were real history. We know that they had a lot of falsehoods in them, okay, but when they taught their children, this is going to be the history that they're teaching. This would be the class that they took on how their country came to be. Okay, so we know that epics have a lot of different heroes. Homer's stories really taught courage and honor. So the meaning of it wasn't really to gain the history of Greece, it was the meaning to gain courage and honor for Greece. So these kids would grow up embracing Greek culture. That's what these stories were for. Some of the values that they instilled, that they were supposed to be loyal to their friends, to their family, to value relationships within those families, and so on. Heroes, okay, were shown to always do the best that they could for the greater good of Greece. Okay, and what these heroes did for these young people in Greece was really to show like the true role model for all Greek people. Okay, so a hero fought for their honor, for their family. They would do everything to protect their country. So these heroes in these stories became the role model for all Greek boys. Now the other type of writing is actually very childlike. So it's something called Aesop's Fables. So fables were stories that were taught to teach kids like good characteristics. So if we look about fables, and actually we know quite a few of these, so if you look down this list, a few of them should pop out to you. So some of the fables that Greece started were The Boy Who Called Wolf, The Tortoise and the Hare. If we look at a few of the other ones on here, you should be able to identify like The Ant and the Grasshopper. These are stories that are told to young children. So these stories are given credit to a man named Aesop. So Aesop is the man that was supposedly wrote all of these fables. And the point of these fables, okay, were to teach kids, like values, to not lie, to never cheat, to always do your best. Fast is not always the greatest. Okay, so supposedly Aesop lived around 550 BC, but as historians look back to figure out who this guy was, they figured out he really wasn't a real person. So who wrote these fables? We're actually not quite sure, but they were so important to the values that we still teach our children these today. So if we look at these fables, they're simply a short story with like a lesson or a moral. A lot of times they're funny to gain the interest of children. They show human strengths and human weaknesses. Now, as we look at these fables, a lot of the lessons are still used today. You know, slow and steady wins the race. Appearances can be deceiving. These are all things that we teach young children to become better people as adults. So these fables and these epics are all going to be told during this golden age of Greece. And if we remember back to our last unit, we know that the golden age of Greece really happened during the time frame after the Persian Wars. That's when Greece really hit its peak. Okay, so if we look at this time, it's going to be when art and philosophy, literature, architecture all really flourished at this time. It was like the high point of everything. Okay, and all of these fables and epics were all a part of Greece's oral tradition. So oral tradition was really that first type of history where stories were passed down one generation to the next. But we know that the problem with oral tradition is that over time, those stories can be exaggerated or tweaked, and really by the end of it, the story has some real, but a lot of false within them. And that's where we're going to stop for this video. We'll pick up on drama on our next Ed Puzzle video.